The day I watched 30,000 gallons of creek water crash through my HOA president's basement ceiling, I knew karma had just delivered the most expensive lesson of her life. There I stood in Delilah Thornberry's flooded man cave, watching her husband's $80,000 home theater disappear under rushing mountain water while she shrieked about insurance claims and federal lawsuits. The metallic taste of pure justice mixed with the smell of soggy drywall as water thundered through her designer's ceiling like nature's own personal vendetta. 6 months earlier, this power-drunk HOA Karen had tried to fill my family's 80-year-old creek with concrete, not realizing she was picking a fight with a hydraulic engineer who knew exactly how water finds a way through even the most expensive basement waterproofing. What would you do if your HOA president illegally tried to destroy your family's heritage with concrete trucks? Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, and subscribe to HOA Stories for more neighborhood justice that'll make your day. My name is Marcus Hartwell, and 6 months ago, I thought inheriting my grandfather's 3-acre slice of Colorado paradise would heal the wounds left by my messy divorce. The crystal-clear creek running through our backyard had been my childhood sanctuary during summer visits, where Grandpa Joe taught me to catch trout with my bare hands and identify every bird by its call. That creek had flowed strong for 80 years, fed by mountain runoff that never failed even during drought seasons, creating a thriving ecosystem where my kids Emma and Jake now spent every weekend catching salamanders and reconnecting with their old man after the custody battles. More than just beautiful, that creek was legally bulletproof. My grandfather's 1952 water rights made our claim senior to anything built afterward. From my 15 years designing hydraulic systems for Morrison Environmental, I knew water law inside and out. First in use, first in right, and junior users can never force senior rights holders to surrender access. The creek wasn't just our family's heartbeat. It was the reason property values stayed high, why wildlife thrived here, and what kept our summer cooling costs reasonable while neighbors ran their air conditioners into bankruptcy. Then Delilah Thornberry slithered into our lives like a designer-dressed plague. Picture a woman who relocated from Phoenix with enough new money to buy the biggest McMansion in Millfield Springs and enough entitlement to think that made her neighborhood empress. Her husband Vernon owns 3 car dealerships, the kind of guy who puts Winter One vanity plates on his white Escalade and parks it in their circular driveway, like a monument to compensating for something. Within 6 months of arriving, Delilah had maneuvered herself into the HOA presidency and launched what can only be described as a suburban ethnic cleansing campaign disguised as community improvement. The war officially began with a certified letter that made my blood pressure spike. Delilah demanded I remediate the water hazard within 30 days or face $500 daily fines, claiming my family creek created mosquito breeding grounds and posed property damage risks to neighboring homes. The irony was rich. This woman, who'd never seen a natural water source that wasn't chlorinated and heated, was lecturing a hydraulic engineer about water management. When I knocked on her door with Grandpa Joe's water rights documentation and offered reasonable compromises like decorative fencing or mosquito control treatments, she wouldn't even pretend to look at the papers. Precedent cannot be set for special treatment, she declared, standing in her $1,000 heels that crunched on our gravel like she was grinding my ancestors' legacy into dust. Her reign of terror had already claimed multiple victims. Sweet Mrs. Morgan, a Vietnamese grandmother whose immaculate vegetable garden fed half the neighborhood kids, was bullied into ripping out her plants because they were allegedly non-native species. Dale, a young father juggling his wife's cancer treatments and 2 small kids, got harassed into repainting his entire house regulation beige during the worst month of chemotherapy because Delilah decided his original color was too bold. But I'd spent 15 years engineering water systems, and I understood something this suburban dictator didn't. When you try to stop a natural force that's been flowing for 80 years, it doesn't just disappear. It finds another way through, usually taking the path of least resistance until it builds enough pressure to break whatever's blocking it. Delilah Thornberry had picked the wrong engineer to mess with, and she was about to learn that water always wins. Delilah wasted no time escalating from passive-aggressive letters to full-scale legal warfare. Within 72 hours, I received a cease and desist letter from attorneys who probably charged more per hour than most people's monthly mortgage, claiming my creek violated city ordinances about uncontrolled water flow. Here's something most homeowners don't realize about HOA intimidation tactics. They'll reference city ordinances and municipal violations that either don't exist or don't apply to your situation, counting on you being too overwhelmed to fact-check their claims. But Delilah's biggest mistake was underestimating how much neighbors hate watching bullies win. When I organized a meeting at Grind and Barrett Coffee Shop, 23 people showed up on a Tuesday evening, and their stories made my blood boil hotter than the industrial-strength espresso. Mrs. Morgan's voice trembled as she described destroying her grandmother's heirloom tomato plants, seeds carried from Vietnam 50 years ago and nurtured through every Colorado season since. Dale fought back tears, explaining how Delilah had threatened daily fines while his wife was too sick from chemotherapy to get out of bed. My engineering background kicked into high gear as I researched our legal position. The original 1998 HOA formation documents revealed something beautiful. My creek was specifically excluded from all covenants because it predated development by decades. Even better, the city planning department confirmed my creek violated zero ordinances and actually had environmental protection status as part of the watershed management system. The State Water Rights Commission was downright encouraging. Grandpa Joe's 1952 claim represented senior rights that legally trumped any HOA authority. Period. Then came the twist that changed everything. Delilah's response to organized community resistance wasn't retreat or compromise. It was declaring total war. She started parking her white Escalade to block my driveway during peak hours, called my employer claiming I was creating workplace disruption, and began what can only be described as a stalking campaign disguised as HOA enforcement. The woman had lost whatever thin veneer of legitimacy she'd maintained and gone full psycho. Delilah's war escalated when she called Morrison Environmental claiming I was creating workplace disruption and filed a false complaint with the county health department, claiming my stagnant water-bred disease-carrying mosquitoes that threatened public safety. The bitter irony was that her own decorative pond, the one with actual standing water and real mosquito problems, sat untested while she weaponized government agencies against a flowing mountain creek. Most people don't realize that filing false environmental complaints creates an official paper trail that can destroy you in court. When County Health Inspector Tom Alvarez arrived expecting a mosquito-infested swamp, he found a pristine ecosystem where native trout spawned in crystal-clear pools and kids played safely in ankle-deep water that sparkled like liquid diamonds. Even better, Tom was a weekend fly fisherman who immediately recognized the rare Colorado cutthroat trout living in my creek, a state-protected species that made any attempt to fill or divert the waterway a potential environmental felony. The anonymous envelope that destroyed Delilah's entire world appeared under my door on a Tuesday morning like a gift from the gods of ironic justice. What I saw made my engineering brain explode with possibilities. Detailed shots of Delilah's basement renovation showing massive unpermitted concrete work, illegal drainage modifications, and a sophisticated French drain system that had never seen a city inspector or received a single approval stamp. The technical picture hit me like a lightning bolt of pure vindication. Delilah's $45,000 man cave renovation hadn't just violated building codes. It had fundamentally hijacked the natural groundwater flow that had fed my family creek for 80 years. Her basement waterproofing included underground barriers and sump pump systems designed to keep Vernon's precious entertainment room bone dry by redirecting groundwater away from their property. But physics doesn't care about property lines or suburban vanity projects. By damming the underground flow that had sustained our creek through every drought since 1952, she'd reduced our water volume by 30% while creating exactly the standing water and drainage problems she'd been blaming on me. The irony was so perfect it felt like cosmic payback. Every single accusation Delilah had hurled at my creek was actually caused by her own illegal modifications to the natural drainage system. When I cross-referenced the construction timeline with Grandpa Joe's 70 years of meticulous weather journals, the correlation was devastating. Our creek had maintained consistent flow through droughts, floods, and seasonal variations with the reliability of a Swiss watch. The decline in creek flow began exactly 6 weeks after Delilah's basement construction started, and her modifications had created an underground dam that starved my creek while flooding neighboring basements during heavy rains. Rebecca Santos practically glowed with predatory satisfaction when I spread the evidence across her conference table. Marcus, this isn't just building code violations. This is environmental crime with federal teeth. The Clean Water Act makes discharging construction pollutants into storm systems a felony, carrying up to $50,000 in daily fines. The legal implications were staggering. EPA enforcement action, mandatory environmental remediation, personal liability for downstream property damage, and potential criminal charges for contaminating municipal water systems. Most homeowners never realize that major drainage modifications often require environmental permits that cost tens of thousands of dollars because altering natural water flow can affect entire watersheds and neighboring properties. The concrete truck ambush revealed Delilah's complete descent into criminal behavior. Brantley Concrete Solutions arrived at twilight claiming authorization for emergency creek remediation without permits, environmental studies, or any legal authority whatsoever. The rumble of that diesel engine in my driveway sent ice through my veins. This psychopath was planning to fill my grandfather's creek with cement under cover of darkness. Fortunately, my neighbors had organized faster than Delilah could organize destruction. 12 text messages warned me about the concrete crew before they'd finished unloading equipment. When I screeched into my driveway to find Delilah standing beside that concrete mixer like some suburban warlord, screaming at the crew foreman about property rights and decisive action, I knew she'd finally crossed from harassment into felony territory. The crew chief, a weathered professional named Miguel who'd been pouring concrete for 20 years, took one look at my water rights documentation and the deputy's badge before flatly refusing to proceed without proper permits. The smell of Miguel's cigarette smoke mixed with Delilah's panic sweat as she watched her surprise attack crumble faster than poorly mixed cement. Saturday morning's confrontation began when concrete trucks roared to life at dawn like mechanical monsters awakening to feed on pristine habitat. Delilah arrived in her most expensive business suit, apparently believing designer armor would legitimize federal environmental crimes committed in broad daylight before dozens of witnesses. Miguel examined my water rights documentation and flatly refused to proceed. "Lady, this is protected watershed with senior rights from 1952. You want federal felonies? Get federal permits, because I'm not sacrificing my contractor's license for your neighborhood psychodrama." The legal cavalry arrived like something from a Western movie, with Deputy Martinez serving cease and desist orders, while Dr. Kendall threatened immediate criminal prosecution under Clean Water Act provisions that carry $25,000 daily fines for filling protected waterways without environmental permits. City Inspector Thompson confirmed that creek modifications required approvals from county, state, and federal agencies that Delilah had never contacted. But the twist that destroyed Delilah's last shred of credibility came when Vernon himself appeared at the confrontation to publicly denounce his wife's environmental terrorism. Standing before 30 neighbors, news cameras, and law enforcement, he announced that Delilah had hidden $60,000 in legal fees and violation fines that threatened their family's financial survival. "My wife has lost perspective about what's important," he declared, his voice shaking with shame and anger. "This creek has been part of our community for 80 years, and destroying it won't solve the problems she created with illegal construction." Delilah's public breakdown provided entertainment that transformed our subdivision into an amphitheater of justice, screaming at law enforcement about government conspiracy while threatening to sue everyone. Her performance was captured by smartphones and news cameras as she transitioned from suburban dictator to clinical case study. Community celebration erupted as neighbors realized they were witnessing the end of tyranny that had terrorized families for over a year. The emergency HOA meeting that would destroy Delilah's empire-packed Millfield Springs Community Center beyond capacity, with 160 residents who'd been terrorized into silence for too long. The financial nuclear bomb exploded when Treasurer Patricia revealed that Delilah's personal vendetta had consumed $87,000 in community funds, completely bankrupting the HOA while enriching attorneys. "Mrs. Thornberry has committed embezzlement disguised as community service," Patricia announced with moral authority. But the moment that ended Delilah's reign forever came when Rebecca Santos approached the microphone carrying an envelope. The Colorado Attorney General's office has filed criminal charges against Delilah Thornberry for environmental crimes, insurance fraud, embezzlement of community funds, and conspiracy to commit perjury. The words hit like thunder before exploding into cheers that shook the building's foundations. Delilah's meltdown was spectacular enough to become YouTube legend. Screaming about government conspiracy and environmental terrorism while threatening lawsuits against every person in the room. Her performance was captured by multiple cameras as she transitioned from suburban dictator to unhinged criminal defendant. When Fire Marshal Wilson moved proceedings outside due to overcrowding, the celebration atmosphere resembled a block party where the neighborhood bully had finally been exposed and defeated. Delilah's consequences arrived with the inevitability of Colorado avalanches as criminal convictions created legal problems that would follow her permanently. $68,000 in EPA fines and mandatory remediation costs bankrupted her completely, forcing sale of their McMansion for $140,000 below market value due to environmental liens. Personal bankruptcy within 4 months marked the spectacular collapse of someone who tried to destroy my grandfather's legacy and ended up obliterating her own life. The creek restoration project funded by Vernon's guilt money transformed our waterway into a regional showcase that exceeded even Grandpa Joe's conservation dreams. Native plant restoration enhanced natural beauty while creating wildlife corridors that brought back species unseen for decades. But the most meaningful transformation was personal, as fighting to save my family's creek had reconnected me with environmental advocacy I'd abandoned during years of corporate consulting. 3 years later, our story had inspired legislative changes to Colorado HOA oversight laws requiring environmental impact review before boards can challenge pre-existing natural features. The annual Creek Festival draws thousands of visitors who celebrate both environmental conservation and democratic governance. Every morning when I walk along the creek banks with steaming coffee, listening to water babble over stones my grandfather placed by hand, I hear his voice reminding me that some battles are worth fighting because they protect what belongs to generations not yet born. What's your worst HOA nightmare? Drop a comment sharing your story and subscribe for more neighborhood justice that proves communities can defeat institutional corruption when they organize, document, and never surrender what matters most.